Hello and welcome back. Today we've been talking about love and marriage. In fact, I've had that crazy song in my head, Love and Marriage, all during the show. Delphin, you've been hearing me kind of hum it in between the breaks. Delphin Parrish joins us, guys. He has been in every stage of love. You've been married and divorced, but you're not afraid to do it all over again for the name of love.
I'm not afraid. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here because your story is something that a lot of people can relate to, because we are seeing divorce rates go up, but we also see people staying married. And I want to pick your brain and know, even though you've been through some hurt, why you want to do it again.
Sure.
So today's show, Love and Marriage, you know that old song that I was singing, goes together like a horse and carriage. Yours didn't go together like a horse and carriage.
Well, it did for a while.
Okay.
And sadly, at some point, my wife decided to leave the relationship and end the relationship, which forced me to learn how to be alone again, which ultimately I think will be a better thing for my next partner.
That's an interesting point. You know, one of the things that we don't do here on the show is man bash, but a lot of the time when people think about divorces and all that kind of stuff, they tend to throw it on the men. You know, a lot of women, maybe it's because I have more girlfriends than guy friends, but sometimes the men get blamed. And so you're saying that you guys, did you date?
We did. We had a traditional courting.
Okay.
We dated for 2 years. Started out as a blind date. A friend of a friend introduced us.
Wow, the blind date. Now that's risky love right there.
It is, and many times those don't work out. In this case, it did. We had a very traditional dating process. Within a few months, we became exclusive. We dated for about 2 years.
Wow.
And then I proposed on a vacation, and we were married a year later. So it was about a 3-year process.
So that's a normal courtship, if not longer than sometimes the norm, or what people would call normal. And so you really felt like you knew this woman when you asked her to marry you. It wasn't like you met her the next day, got married in Vegas. It was...
Did not, yeah.
Okay, so you knew her, and how long were you married?
We were married about 2.5 years, and at that point, she felt a need to end the relationship. We were in marriage counseling, and I thought things were improving. She felt they weren't, and ultimately, she made the decision to exit the relationship.
Now, marriage counseling, do you recommend that for couples that might be trying to figure out, is this marriage that I'm in going to work, or is it on the fence?
The hardest thing, yes, I would. And the hardest thing I found in relationships is that both partners have the strength and the courage to tell the truth about how they feel in the relationship. And it took marriage counseling for us to get to a place where both felt comfortable. And ultimately, it got to a place where my wife was able to finally get comfortable and say, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. But it took the help of a marriage counselor to get us there.
Wow. Now you seem really calm as you tell your story. And I know me, and if I was in any kind of this situation, I would not be a happy camper. Yeah. How did you get to this point of peace and knowing that this is, you know, it's time to move on?
Great question. I actually went through a very traditional grieving process, which was encouraged to me by my therapist, who I see regularly. It was important for me to get support. So I have my own therapist I've mentioned, as well as various support groups. I'm involved with a men's support group that meets regularly. And the idea of being able to express things like anger and sadness. So the idea that I'm calm today is only as a result of me being able to work through a lot of the anger and sadness, which is very normal. And you know, I'm now to a position which is about a year later, and to where I'm able to finally recognize that those feelings have sort of worked through, and now I'm able to maybe meet someone else.
And it is a process. I think you're explaining overall the steps in the process to go through whenever people, now everyone kind of does it differently. Do you hear a lot of divorce when you're out and about in these groups? I mean, is divorce kind of the latest trend, or is it, I mean, what are you hearing out and about?
Well, it's a great question. I'm actually one of the few of my friends, in fact, I really am the only one of my closest friends that was divorced. My parents are celebrating 40 years. So I didn't grow up with divorce. So the idea of somebody leaving a relationship was very foreign and very scary to me.
Right.
And so it forced me to deal with this idea that I am now alone. And so as far as is it happening elsewhere, I have, in some of my support groups, I am being introduced to more people who have been through the process. And that was really helpful as well, to find mentors who have gone through it and say, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad. It is a loss. It is in many ways like a death.
Yeah, well, and brightening this up just a little bit, because that's more of the serious side.
Sure.
You had to get through that to get to where you are today.
Sure.
But with that, where you are today, love. Are you wanting to fall in love again?
Absolutely. You know, to me, having a partner to share experiences with is one of the main motivations for my life, of course. And I had to spend some time alone to deal with some of the more difficult feelings to be able to get to a place where I'm now ready to share some of those joys with someone else.
And it's interesting because we were talking about love and marriage, and what you just said about wanting someone to share it with, I think is what it comes down to. People do want someone to share life with and share the memories. Do you think you have to be married to have that person to share life with?
Well, the way that I'm approaching it today is instead of going out and looking for women to date, the way that I'm going about meeting people is literally just looking for people to spend time with, and then hoping that something naturally develops, which is not something that I traditionally did. I looked for a woman that I was interested in, that I would ask on a date, and I would try to win her favor. And now, as I'm a little older, I realize that it's really about companionship and somebody who you really look forward to spending time with versus trying to win them over. So the idea of just spending time with really interesting people will hopefully lead me naturally to the next step, which would be a relationship.
If you went into a relationship with someone, is marriage an option? Do you want to get married ultimately?
I do. I'd ultimately like to have a wife. I did before. And the idea of starting a family, of course, is something that I would be interested in as well.
Well, great. DJ, thank you so much for sharing your story. So many times people keep things bottled up. And I think it's very admirable that you came on, you opened up about the process. But the coolest part is that even though, despite what you've been through, in the name of love, you want to do it again.
Thank you.
Okay, too bad we don't have Singled Out anymore. Remember that show?
Sure.
Yeah, we can submit you to it. Coming up next, we're sitting down with a therapist that's going to break down the love triangle. We'll be right back.
This portion of Weekends with Whitney was brought to you by Rafter Restaurant Food and Beverage Delivery.